YouTube, I'm David with the David West channel. Trying to speak in low tones because it's early on a Sunday morning, but here's a red maple tree and there's no leaves close enough to show you, but I found this branch underneath it. And normally you'd want to find a branch that no longer had bark on it, but if you know drying cycles, you can use something like this that's really old, somewhat degraded. So we'll use drying cycles, and they're nothing but repeated burn-ins, which you're trying to let the steam out, and you keep on doing the burn-ins until you start getting black dust, and that dries out the working surfaces enough to where you can go ahead and try for the ember.
I'm going to get rid of all of this curve in the knots. Piece I use, even though it's got a big bow in it.
Because this section here feels drier and feels more degraded, let's see if we can make a spindle out of this and the fireboard. Now on a fireboard, I like to find out where it's already sitting the flattest, and that looks like it's going to be right here.
A lot of green right there. Seems like poplar, and I hate poplar.
Alright, fireboard done. And I like the density of this wood. It's partially degraded. Good sign. I don't feel a lot of moisture in it, but I'm still going to do some drying cycles on it. I always like to show you this stage before I start rounding it off. 4 basically square sides. Now let's round it off. I got some more tweaking to do on it. Like this is going to be my hot end. It's this, since this one is kind of oblong, we'll turn this into the bearing block end. Not too bad for a quick roughing out, is it? Alright, since we're going to use a Fatwood bearing block, I'm going to put a, I don't know, starting back about 1.5 inches and just taper it to a point. And I'll keep eyeballing that point to be on the center line with the rest of the spindle. Now it doesn't need to be that sharp, but that's just the way it turned out. I'll come down about 1/4 inch and start tapering it. Then come up 1/8 inch and go around it again. then I come up 1/16 of an inch and go around it the last time. And that's usually a good point to start with. Something blunt. You never want your divot to wear into a cone, your spindle and divot to wear to a cone shape. You always want sort of a blunt end working its way down into the board. And you know, there'll be little touch-ups to do. When you look down on it, you want it to be just as round as you can get it. You can't always get it perfect. But take your time with it. It's very important to get this as symmetrical and as round as possible, because most sets it won't matter, but some sets that are on the verge of not producing, it makes the difference. Let me get behind the camera and show you what we got here. I like a long spindle. This one is 10 inches. We are ready to do a burn-in. I'll be doing drying cycles on the burn-in, and I'll be doing drying cycles after I cut the notch and we're going for the ember. Try to release, drive off as much of that steam as possible. Remember, a dust pile needs, before a dust pile can ignite, it needs to get to at least 600 to 800 degrees. If you've got 212 degree steam constantly coming out of there, there's no way to get up to 600 and 800 degrees while there's still moisture, while there's still 212 degree steam in there. All right, let's take a look at the bird's nest. Tulip poplar bark. Got my coarse stuff on the bottom and my gradually finer and finer stuff on the top. Tulip poplar bark. And we're going to use the Fatwood bearing block. And let me tell you this, I've been wanting to tell you this for a long time. If you're wearing yourself out, if you don't have enough energy to complete making a bow drill ember because it's just too tiring, you don't want to use a great big 1-inch spindle. Even this 3/4 is a little bit bigger than what I like. So, you know, from 3/4 down to 5/8 would be ideal. Anything bigger than that, you are going to have to work like crazy to get you some charred dust and to get an ember. And another thing that adds unnecessary difficulty is when you have your bowstring too tight. Now, this bowstring's a little bit on the loose side, but it's going to be easier. It's going to be easier to drive. If I need to come over here and press down on this while I'm bowing, that'll tighten it up. But these people that fight to get their spindle in there, and you can hear the string singing like a violin string or something, it's too tight. The tighter that the string is on the spindle, the harder it is to drive the spindle. And the harder you have to press down on the bearing block just to keep it into the fireboard. Because it takes so much effort to turn the spindle, so now you're pressing down harder on the bearing block too. So I recommend that you put your string on just tight enough to drive it, and if that's not tight enough, bear down on it with your thumb. You don't want to wear yourself out. Let's go for the burn-in. We're going to go ahead and do drying cycles at the same time. Repeated burn-ins to let that steam out of there. Keep on doing burn-ins till you see some dark dust showing up. Now it's starting to slip. I'm going to press down with my thumb. Alright, I see some black down in the divot, but they're still only making brown dust. Let's do another burn in. All right, the dust is about twice as dark. Should take only one more drying cycle. Now, we have a dark spindle. And dark dust around the divot. I'm going to save that dust and go ahead and cut that notch, and I'll turn you back on. All right. So my board's about 5/8 of an inch thick. My spindle's about a 3/4. Flat point notch. And we'll see how many drying cycles I'm going to do when I get started. And I'm going to tighten this up just a hair, like a 1/4 inch. I'm going to tighten it up. Watch this. Just that 1/4 inch right there. And I'm bottomed out in that deeper one, so I'm going to use this one on the side here. Let's see what we can do with it. With our on-the-spot red maple. This is red maple on red maple, Fatwood bearing block, Tulip Poplar tinder bundle. Alright, I just gave it 3 tries, 3 good hard tries, and it didn't work, so I want a wider, I'm just going to start over. I want a wider notch. I want it to go deeper towards the center of the knot, of the divot. And I whittle down on the diameter of the spindle to make it smaller. And we're going to use this new divot in the bearing block. So let's just start over. This will be my 4th attempt. I was going to reuse the other divot that was there, but I wanted to take it. It was too far inset, so I wanted to shave some of the side off, some of the front of it off, and it just broke off. That's why the fireboard is shorter like that. All right, here we go with drying cycles again. That's already good and dark. I'll go cut the notch and turn you back on. Tweak to get the divot closer to the edge, to have a wider notch, and to have it deeper. If you think about it, the deeper the notch, the quicker it's going to come, the dust is going to come in contact with the bottom of that spindle, which is what actually does the igniting. So let's see if this will work. My 4th attempt at an ember. Whoa. That 1/4 inch that we tighten up on the bowstring is perfection now. I don't even have to use my thumb to help tighten it up. All right. I can't tell you which tweak it was. Moving the divot closer to the edge, making a wider notch, making a deeper notch. And oh yeah, I went from 5/8 of an inch thickness on the fireboard, I cut it down to 1/2 inch. Was it any of those tweaks? Or was it just that this part of the fireboard wasn't all that great? I don't know. I know it's common though. The most common successful tweak when an ember will not make is to make the notch wider and especially to make it deeper. On the spot, red maple. Moisture. Moisture is always the problem, isn't it? Learn to do the drying cycles. I'm not sure. I've already edited half the video. I'm not sure how many of the drying cycles I left in, but you really need to learn that technique. When dust is that lightweight, very often it takes a long time for it to coalesce, but it's worth the wait. You want it to stay together and into one intense mass. You have a better chance of getting flames. Let's try the tulip poplar bark. Well, it was a rough start, but we got it to work out. Thanks for joining me on this one. We'll catch you on the next one.